Amul is an excellent example of smaller marginal farmers, women farmers in particular getting access to a certain kind of livelihood pathways. In many other parts of the country, things are very, very great, including in Punjab also. I think definitely have actually to that apply. Amul is an example of smaller marginal farmers, women farmers in particular.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So, on top of the existing climate crisis and the crisis of livelihoods, some of the additional issues that emerged in the last few years, especially around the crisis, was that as the world is moving to resolve some of these issues, we are seeing increasing extractive relationships with the rural. So, for instance, there's presentations talking about how renewable energy sites now across the country are actually possible ways of land travel. Rural people are going to catch up to land which they land for pastoralists in particular, is considered wasteland, and is now being, wind energy, solar energy plants. They're creating kind of conflicts with people in rural areas. All of the enthusiasm that's happening over the electric vehicles, it is all this is lithium-ion batteries, and lithium mining is becoming a very, very extractive enterprise globally. And so as we are trying to resolve some of these crises, newer crises are developing because the relationships between the urban and the rural haven't really been transformed yet. Just to quickly take us back to the report that we released today, which is the Gujarati translation of the State of Rural and Agrarian India report, which was originally came out in 2020. Some of the issues that are highlighted in the report are still very, very important and prominent today in terms of dealing with these threats. And I'll highlight just three of them. One is the continued emphasis on the individual farmer as the sole person to engage with, either by the state or by civil society, or by technology startups, or by market entrepreneurs, or market players. And while we are realizing that a lot of the agricultural-based participation that are required in this space need collective transformations of landscapes and collective work across people, and cannot be done by individual farmers alone, especially the large majority of smaller marginal farmers in the country. The other emphasis has been that a lot of the technology and market players in this space are still working with dominant models of agriculture. They are unable to figure out how to work with diverse agroecological models. And in that specifically, one of the other large themes that emerged from the last few days was the need for very consciously trying to bring in issues of social justice into discussions of agroecology. The assumption that agroecological models and alternative models will automatically be socially just or bring on board lenses of gender, caste, class, and diversity may not necessarily play out, and a lot of conscious thinking and efforts will need to happen, especially in new startups and new market players who are emerging in the rural space, to not cement and reinforce existing hierarchies that already exist in these spaces in terms of access to resources like land, water, energy, and the rest of it. I just shown a very quick, brief example from our own country historically. We have often praised agroecological or eco-friendly water harvesting measures in our country. So, for example, tank irrigation in southern India, or the Ahar mine system in Bihar, as good models that we should try and go back to or try and adopt in terms of the irrigation landscape. But we must remember that these models were built based on exploitative caste-based labor relations, and people who have the knowledge, the practice, the skills to make these models, to maintain them, did not have the right to own land and were not allowed to actually farm and gain the benefits from the work that they did on an equal footing with other people in these places. And so, recognizing very consciously hierarchies across communities, recognizing hierarchies across the global scale, especially historically in terms of colonialism and its legacy. All of these are very consciously required as we try and build models for this alternative space. And the third very big question that has emerged, and there was a lot of discussion on this in the last few days, two special optional sessions that were put together were on the discussion that Vijay also referred to was the organic farming, natural farming sort of debate. What are the nomenclatures? How do we go beyond this? And as Yagini mentioned in the earlier session, as Vijay said, as Kapil Bhai mentioned, several others have said, it's really important for people within this alternative space to come together because there are bigger players to contend with, bigger battles to be fought, bigger battles against. I mean, how do we lead with ICAR and scientific institutions to look at agriculture differently? How do we engage with large monopolies and oligopolies within the agrarian space in terms of ownership of knowledge, seeds, inputs, as well as markets? I mean, the big four, but we have a lot of Indian companies now joining the big four, that is the whether it's the ABCDs or the virus, China and the other giants of the world, we must figure out ways to consolidate the fledgling efforts that are there, which we've seen in the last few days in terms of civil society, academia, governments, as well as other partners, to see how we can actually engage with the real mainstream to consider some of these issues more seriously. And finally, I will lay out three agenda items that I was able to put together in terms of what could be the next set of ideas that people associated with the NRA would in fact strategy research and work on. The first is new measures of value. Of course, we all agree we have to go on implement productivity, but it is still a challenge in terms of how we define, evaluate, understand, measure, and bring to the mainstream ways to understand energy pathways, ways to understand water use, try and measure ecosystem services, the material throughput or material intensity of the kinds of work we are doing, biodiversity. How do we, in fact, help mainstream scientific institutions to incorporate new measures of value in the way agriculture and the rural are evaluated, including the work of artisans, for instance. How do we understand and revalue what they might be doing is a very, very important research agenda that it should be our primary agenda in the next few years. The second is to very specifically understand what are the existing models that are working currently today at multiple scales. So that includes understanding what individual farmers may be doing, but also what large programs like the Odisha Millet Mission might be able to accomplish. Also what CSOs are working, what kind of financing models work, what kind of technology and startup ideas are actually able to make a difference on the ground. But not just understand them in terms of what's working, but also specifically look at them and see, can we address questions of social and existential justice? Otherwise, we may be able to view the metabolic risk to actually figure out how humans and nature can actually work together. But in terms of the hierarchies within the civil society, we may be nothing to actually address them. And finally, this kind of research has been done in the past, but I think it needs to continue and strengthen is what other documents said, documenting failure. So, problem with existing mainstream logic, we need to not only understand the regeneration and the skill effect, but also new interventions, the technologies in terms of the spread, for example, of plastic across rural areas. What are the implications of some of that? What are the implications of community hierarchy in practice to market? So a lot of these issues in terms of mainstream logic need to be interrogated and studied. And broadly, I have tried to very, very summarize the last set of issues that emerged over the last few days. One thing that also emerged, and that's what I would like to leave you at the end with, is that young people are leaving farming. They don't want to come back to farming. And the rural is increasingly even now feels redundant and meaningless. So how can we in fact work along with all the different people that we have here, as well as people within those spaces and urban spaces? I think it's very important to get consumers and urban homes back into this picture to make the rural meaningful again. So that the rural is no longer residual, farming is no longer something that is undesirable. And how to make it socially acceptable again. I will leave it with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vijay, for trying to put together some key ideas that have come and community can engage with in the coming few months and years. It's now my pleasure to, share with you a vote of thanks for very engaging, exhaustive, and exhausting to some of us conference over the last 3 days. So I'd like to first start with thanking all you presenters and panelists for having taken time off to be part of this event in the physical form over the last 3 days. I remember we started pretty late in, for an international conference, doing it in June, July, when we were kind of ready. And when we shared the concept note with the organizing committee, I think there was a lot of attention. Look, I engaged me. So it's almost an adage now that when academics fail, civil society solves the problem. So if you had, a case, an interesting case where we've had 108 papers and 45% of all these papers have come from non-academic audience, from development practitioners. And it's very important for academia to listen to these voices, even as they take ideas from other sources, from journals, books, etc. But thank you so much for all of you for having taken the trouble to be here physically, and thank you so much for putting up with the regular songs that me and some of us have had, asking you to stick to deadlines, go through the processes of, sending an abstract. Some of you have probably presented a paper for the first time in conference of this kind. It requires a little bit of push, but you have always outstanding. It's been a great pleasure to have people right from the mid-20s to people in the mid-70s and even more to be part of this conference. So this is a remarkable tribute to all of your, efforts. And I think the spirit of hospitality and generosity has been very high. Many people volunteer to pay their own costs to come here, and that solves a lot of problems for us with regard to finance. And you have offered to do so. So we really appreciate that effort so that we could support others who could come. The conference is being meant to be as exclusive as possible. So while we had to reject a few people, it was really nice to get responses from people when we told that you can still join this conference even if your paper has not been accepted. So I thank many of them, and many of them who were not even part of this exercise forgot to send a paper but still wanted to come in. We're very grateful to all of you who have joined us, and your contribution has made this conference vivid. So big thank you to all of you. Thanks to Bharat Bhushan Tyagi for accepting our invitation and very readily, and importantly being with us for all these 3 days. So it was easy for us to give this keynote address and then head away elsewhere. I think we were around willing to spend time. Many of us have had an opportunity to discuss with him and learn from his tremendous wisdom. That's the only word that I can use. This is way beyond what you can get in an institution. So Bharat Bhushan Tyagi जी बहुत धन्यवाद आपको यहाँ आने, और हम चाहते हैं कि आप दोबारा आइए और साथ मिलकर काम भी करें. So there are many people who've been behind this, so I'd like to start with the organizing committee. There's one organizing committee here now, but it's a broader kind of organizing committee which also included members from NRA, so Dr. Vasuni, Vijay Shankar, and Richard. And within IRMA, we had, Professor Priya, Tipu, Nathan, Mandu Lakra, Sunil Sangwan, and Deborah Dutta. So all of us had a tough time, going through the abstract and aligning our responses so that we have similar kinds of responses and doing all the reviews. So thanks a lot to the organizing committee for making this happen. We've had a conference committee, and I think we're not getting better with time organizing such conferences, and I'd like to thank our director for setting up processes in place so that we could have these conference committees. So we have a few of the members here. Saurabh Prajapati is also a member of the organizing committee. Shivan is here. And if anybody else here, I'm missing the name. So please convey our sincere thanks to all the conference committee. And of course, our director for fully supporting this idea right from the start and creating a culture so that, we want people to come to IRMA. And what has been fascinating, or a bit of a surprise, is that many of you are coming to IRMA for the first time. You've been here in this space for maybe 20, 30 years. We'd like you to visit the campus more often, and as you see, this is a great place to have a conversation which you cannot have in Delhi, Mumbai, and other kinds of places. So, thank you all for all of that. This conference would have been possible without a few special people, and I'd like to invite all of them to come and join us. So let me start with the small farm income team. Abhishek Saxena, please come and join. Yeah, Saurabh and, you can all come. Please come up and stand right here. So I call names, and if there are volunteers who are there, you can also join. So Abhishek has been a strong source of support, always reminding me when I've been goofing off in the last few months. And, he's agreed to delay his PhD by a few months just for this conference. So thanks a lot, Abhishek. And we can see all the way best for the future of the PhD. Anish Mohan, welcome. So, Anish is, of course, been there for many other things as well. All of you have had a chance to meet up with him during the field visit and other kinds of work as well. Ankit Kumar, who's helped us, please come. All the accommodating and other issues. Shubha Kante, please join us. We joined the team late, but we need the great source of support. Asmita and Sonal, Asmita is sorting out travel issues, but she's probably not here. And Sonal Chaudhary, and any of the volunteers here from IRMA. Okay, so I'd like you all to give a big round of applause to all these here. Maybe I don't want to join me. Yes. So of course, I will be paying my duty if I didn't mention the support of the Ford Foundation in making all this conference possible. I think it's the silent support of the philanthropic donors which has made us easier. We had to do fundraising at the same time for this conference, which has been an extremely difficult task. We'd like to sincerely thank Ford Foundation for their consistent support to all the events of the network of women agrarian studies. I think that's almost the first event onwards. Unfortunately, Subrat and Reshma couldn't join us today, but we will continue this in person next week. So with these words, I'd like to bring the conference to a close. There's some news for all of you. Amul has put up a small stall outside of their organic products. And I told for all conference participants, there's a special 12% discount. So please go and have a look at it, and then please join us for tea and snacks at EPDC. Thank you all very much, and I hope none of you will get on the way down.